Thanks everyone for joining the webinar today, Plugging the Gap. My name is Claire and I'll be compere for today. So before I hand over to Engin, who's going to be delivering this session for us, I'd just like to remind everyone, if you've got any questions, please feel free to submit them during the presentation. I'll be monitoring the chat, can answer any questions that might come in, or save the good ones for the end for Engin when we have a bit of a Q&A. So without further ado, I'll hand over to Engin.
Thank you very much, Claire, and whose ever dog that happened to be. I'd like to apologise in advance for any errors, omissions, or poor segues that I might make. I've travelled a very long way to be on this webinar that Marketing very kindly organised for me, and lost a tooth in the process, so I can't be powered by coffee or my normal Haribo. So I will jump straight into it. So today we're going to talk about plugging the gap, but specifically email security and how it relates to the human condition, and the kinds of measures and trends and other pieces that reflect upon that, or how you might go about shielding the organization, and some of the mitigation strategies that you might employ to make happen. So let's start with that human condition. Now, as awesome and as amazing as we all are, sadly, none of us are perfect. And it's not intentional, but those imperfections are definitely exploitable, and there's no shortage of those who'd like to or subvert those human shortcomings. And as a CISO or someone in that space, there are various things that you might do to limit that in your organization, but anyone who has dealt with the complexity and challenges that literally any number of users within your organization can bring, there's no shortage of opportunity either for the bad guys out there. And it's a bit like this scene from one of my favorite films, a scene from 2001 Space Odyssey, where Hal, little red dot in the center of the screen at the back outside of the window, is busy stealing information by reading the lips of Frank and Dave. And if you haven't seen this film before, a bit of a spoiler alert, he uses that information to kill at least one of them. And without getting too nerdy, in this particular scene, Dave did not have to turn the plot around so how the AI could read their lips, but then your users don't have to interact with malicious emails or other pieces of information that they happen to receive that cause your organization financial loss or reputational damage. So moving on from that and kind of looking at, what does that mean from the overall attack surface? Now, way back when in the 90s, life was a little bit simpler. In the 90s, it was very much human led. The human did the heavy lifting, and they were trying to crack into someone's database to extract the information within it. Wind on a little bit further forward, getting into the 2000s, people got a little bit smarter, and scale came into effect, and it was more of a machine-to-machine kind of approach to see how we could brute force our way into other people's secrets and important pieces of information. But the industry in general got wise to it and made that exceptionally difficult. And such things, finding the path of least resistance, that kind of took us to 7-8 years ago, and things became a little bit more human to human, placing that bet on how much the effort to impact of such an attack would have, and more treating these attacks and these phishing expeditions more of a marketing campaign to see what you could extract from a user, whether it was the company's money, their money, or anything personal information, or the company's information. Winding things further forward again, and that trend is definitely heading in the direction of machine to human engagement, where there are organizations springing up at the moment, a number of startups I sort of talk to on a daily basis, or fairly often, where they use they synthesize data to scale such things. Now, obviously, they're scaling for very good reasons to help machine learning models, but by the same token, they freely admit that this approach, synthetic data curation, could be used for nefarious means by the bad guys to make those carefully created phishing campaigns at a scale that we've not yet seen, but it's certainly on the cards and ahead of us. Now, if we think in terms of these attacks as marketing campaigns, and through the eyes and the desk of the attacker trying to exploit those human weaknesses, what are the levers that they're pulling? And having looked at sort of various pieces of research from psychologists who've kind of looked into these points, the things that seem most effective are these three. Leveraging someone's aversion to loss, and loss aversion is the highest indexing factor in a phishing attack that would get someone to act against theirs or the company's best interests. Even more so if it would seem that this loss aversion, maybe it's an email from the CEO that says you need to fill this HR assessment by the end of the day. Click on this link, and you know how that story ends. The second most popular approach is appealing to someone's self-interest, whether it's their self-promotion or whether it's a hobby that they might have. They will go and click on that just as readily. And the reason why they're so readily exploitable is that many people fall back to accepting whatever the default is. There is a set of behaviors. It's the same reason why people never ever change their settings on their phone, the settings on their routers. When it comes to just on a personal level, 82% of people never change the settings, the default password on their routers, and that is a definite problem, and it's definitely exploitable by those out there. So, thinking it from the other side of the fence, from that marketing campaign kind of point of view, one of our customers, when they were thinking about how their users had been exploited, broadly put people into these three buckets: the complacent, the careless, and the time poor crunched. And it was a very sort of interesting way that they'd kind of sort of approached it and taken this view on how folks interacted. Obviously, they don't have the intent to do the company harm, but inevitably this is how it kind of baked out. And so we went and asked a few more customers to get their sense of this and what their observations were. And so by polling them, we kind of saw that people who are likely to be phished, 9% fell into that. It's never going to happen to me. I am far too smart. We saw this in some of the user testing that we did ourselves. It would seem that the more senior somebody becomes, the more self-assured they are that they are absolutely not going to be phished. We ran a very broad set of simulations with all sorts of folks from all industries at all levels, and we found that if you were director level or above, you were 3% more likely to be phished than anyone else. It was 39%, plays 42%. The next category is the careless. They just really haven't given it any thought whatsoever, and they've not been able to spot either the obvious or non-obvious warning signs within the email. We're not talking about using alternative fonts or anything else. The very clear indicators within the email. But the biggest group are the time poor. They're up against the clock permanently. Maybe they work in a support function or some sort of delivery over time function, and they're the ones who are most likely to fall victim to that. Sorry, I forgot to turn Slack off and it just kind of lit up. Sorry about that. So those kind of time poor people, it's not surprising when you when you think that most opens for email are going to be on a mobile phone, about 46% of them, and even when it's expressly forbidden. Microsoft did a survey, and 67% of people are using their own devices for work purposes, whether it's a phone, laptop, typically a phone, even when it's forbidden, and those phones don't have the same security measures that you would put in place for a company-owned device, and your ability to influence the email client, even on a good day, is going to be very, very limited. So that kind of turns to the next thought and the next film, so Jaws. But it's been said that no plan really survives first contact with the enemy, which is why companies don't necessarily have one plan. They have multi-layered approaches to preserving the security of their users. But inevitably, in any plan, in any situation, you realize that whatever plan that you had, it hasn't really survived that contact with the enemy, whether it's the first, second, or third, and sooner or later you are going to need a bigger boat. And I think in the end of this, I think pretty much everyone has been eaten, and the successful strategy was explosives. Whereas at the very beginning of the film, they started trying to hunt for jaws with fishing rods. So there was a bit of rebalancing of risk that folks had to do there, which is the next thought of why it's important to have a secure and scalable platform. And this is our view of what that bigger boat looks like. Now, when you have a fair idea of what the most effective attack vectors are, you can plan for them. And for us at Red Sift, that's our dynamic platform, which is modular, scalable, and is able to face rapidly evolving threats. Now, what that nets down to for us are our mainline products on DMarc, on Inbox, and on Domain, which in turn, from an on DMarc point of view, prevents impersonation and secures your domains at scale. Also makes you a good email and web citizen by preventing impersonation, and you're a good citizen by someone else's supply chain. On Inbox, takes a look from the other angle. It looks at your email supply chain and is able to help you separate who is risky within it, and also able to get you to deter users from making, let's say, poor email interaction choices from people who are trying to exploit their default behaviors or their complacent, careless, or crunched natures. Then finally, there is on Domain, which looks beyond the traditional perimeter of threats and looks at the evolving threats of lookalikes as they prepare for an attack, but outside of what you would normally see and not have any sight of. So in that version of the world now, this is kind of happy days for someone trying to get to your users, but obviously no one is going to allow unfettered access to their users, and 38% of global organizations claim that they are well set up to handle a sophisticated cyber attack because of the measures that they've put in place. But this confidence isn't entirely accurate. So most folks will have some form of secure email gateway. They might also deploy the protections that are inherent for Microsoft or Defender or Google's advanced protection as well. But those are very, very reactive. That's pretty much when the wolf has 1 foot inside the door, and you're trying to retrospectively use the rules that they offer you to try and do something about it. For us, we sort of step a little bit outside that, and OnDomain sits outside looking at those lookalikes as they form. Now, for us, in real time, we look at the live internet of a couple of 100 million domains forming each day, and we provide a risk rating. We provide the emergence and alerts on the threats as they evolve. So that'll look at the email readiness of the lookalike domain. It'll look at, if it has some sort of web presence where the harvesting of data could occur. It looks at the IP and domain reputations of those domains. And importantly too, it also looks at if that website is using your logo in unauthorized fashion. And so it'll capture all of these pieces. It'll tell you why a lookalike looks alike, whether it happens to be what its proximity is, or even if it's using homoglyphs, and provide you that risk rating. As you can see on this screen, it also mentions takedowns. So if you sense that the risk is sufficiently high enough, you can apply to have that site taken down from directly within the product. So if it's a question of fraud, the website's intent is to steal data, steal money, you can get that taken down within a matter of hours and have that managed directly from within the product, and have the alerts advising us to the progress of both lookalikes and the takedown as well. Going further, on DMarc sits within that that workspace and it's sort of email sending kind of circle of defense. As I said, it prevents impersonation, it secures your sending sources, but most importantly, it takes your organization out of circulation as far as the exploiter is concerned, and makes you that good citizen. Even though your supply chain may never know it or appreciate it, it helps them too. Additionally, the additional benefits of on DMarc is that there is BIMI is baked in. Now, for those who don't know, BIMI is brand identification for message indicators, or the other way around. Sorry, I apologize, I've been up for a very long time. But that's the outward signal that you have done everything necessary to get that your sending domain to reject, and presents that that email user with your registered logo that's been verified by one of the certification authorities. It also brings to the table forensic reporting with sender intelligence, helping you to sort of sift through what are genuine sending domains, what are shadow IT that maybe sort of another part of the organization has kind of brought to the fore, and which are just simply just misconfigurations, and being able to drill down into that. Also comes with on DMarc's dynamic services that provides scalability and complete accuracy for domain management. Dynamic DMarc removes, does all of that, and then dynamic SPF brings to the fore the removal of the 10 lookup ceiling that you might experience. So if you have you're a user of sort of work Gmail, maybe you use Marketo as well, that's probably 8 out of 10 lookups gone. Once you've gone beyond that 10 lookup limit, which is obviously a very sort of useful and legitimate kind of approach to stop denial of service attacks, you will start to experience sending issues. But dynamic SPF, as part of dynamic services, removes that, and we have customers who have upwards in the tens of thousands of domains being managed with 0 errors within on DMarc because of dynamic SPF. Looking at the next layer, phishing training. Now, many people deploy phishing training. The larger the organization, the more likely they are to deploy it. In the UK, 73% of enterprise-sized businesses and 54% of medium-sized businesses do just that. But if you dig a little bit deeper, very often it's sometimes seen as a tick box exercise, if not by the organization, certainly by a lot of the people participating in it. And looking at that sort of the metrics on that, 20% of people asked to take the training to maintain that compliance simply don't attend. And for those who do, only 30% of them retain that information for more than a day. That means that for the remainder of the time between those training cycles, you can only really rely on about 24% of your staff to act as that last layer of defense, which is why something else, something a bit smarter needs to be brought into it. Again, using AI, using natural language processing to ever evolve and to learn of the exploits that bad guys might use to try and deter people from that. And for us at Red Sift, that is on inbox. Not just deterring folks, but analyzing the supply chain, separating those who are risky, identifying those who are at risk, and allowing you to implement deterrents that look a little like this, and to give your users clear and explicit guidance as to why there is an issue with this email, and allowing, there are baked in warnings, but depending on the circumstances, you can identify a group and also give them specific warnings as to what they should or should not do. It can range from the polite to the blunt, and some of our customers have jokingly said, I'll just put in here, don't even think about it, touch nothing. This also comes with the ability to report those emails, and also for admins to remediate those reports and delete those from all users' inboxes. We'll also be connecting one of the products I mentioned, on domain and on inbox together very, very shortly, so that when you see those who are risky within your supply chain, i.e. those who don't have DMarc and are open to impersonation and not have the same foresight to get themselves to reject and prevent them being spoofed, is to be able to start watching the lookalikes evolving against those, and to pass those back to on inbox for automatic remediation, so that your users are never impacted by those lookalikes. And I think I may well be sort of bumping up against time, but I'll just finish on this. And just a very short recap of the platform advantage that Red Sift brings, and how we go about solving the human condition and plugging the gap that it leaves in your defenses by democratizing the most important aspects of cybersecurity. And I think that's me. And Claire,
Brilliant. Thanks, Engin.
Questions, back to you.
Cheers, Engin. We'll just wait a couple of minutes so people can type any questions. I've answered a couple that have come in, but let's just wait a couple of seconds, see if anyone's got any questions. Otherwise, perfectly timed. Okay, I can see one. So do you think, the question is, do you think phishing training is going to go away anytime soon because of the sorts of technology that you talked about today? Or, is it here to stay? Because it's, I'm assuming that this person is saying it's probably pretty ingrained in their processes at the moment.
Yeah, I see it. All sorts of education is, education is definitely a good thing, and phishing training forms part of that kind of suite of security awareness, which all users, should definitely have. The question is more for the user of, do I want to rely solely on phishing training, knowing that, folks are still left to their own devices and being able to make a choice, or do I want to implement one more layer of defense after it, and to use it on inbox or something like on inbox to secure that last level, deter the users, but then also have those sort of deep insights as to what is happening within their supply chain, because that supply chain looks at not just those who have DMarc or not DMarc. It also uses its own AI to determine and give that view on are most of the emails that your users are receiving and are interacting with, are they expressing urgency? Are they asking people to share account information? Should you have a different treatment? So I think it's very much down to the user as to, or the company organization as to how they want to secure their
sure. Okay, so it's not so much a matter of replacing, but more kind of complementing.
Oh yes, right, yeah. I may have gone on a bit long, but yeah.
No. I get the point you're making. It's kind of, they're serving two different purposes, right? So the technology is helping people in the moment respond to stuff in the right way, rather than the one-off phishing training or whatever. Okay, I'm going to squeeze in one last question because it's a good one. So going back to the lookalike or spoof domains, how quickly can they be shut down once you've spotted one?
So the speed of takedown is very much a function of the quality of evidence. Now, we collect a lot of evidence about the domain, its readiness, characteristics like websites, logos, etc. So let's say in the best case scenario, you could be looking at minutes, maybe an hour or two. At the further outreaches, maybe it's not a fraud takedown, maybe it's a brand takedown. That's where somebody is misusing or is using your logo and hasn't been authorized to do so. In that situation, it's much more human-led involvement, and it could take days or weeks as the investigations kind of go on. But for fraud, which is the main use case here, again, if you have good quality evidence, you're looking minutes to hours rather than weeks.
Okay, yep, that's great. Okay, well, with 1 minute left on the clock, I'm going to say thank you everyone for joining us today. I hope that you got some new and fresh insights from all the information that Engin shared. If in the meantime you want to learn anything else about how Red Sift can help you with the various cybersecurity threats that your organization is facing today, don't be afraid to get in touch. Otherwise, we'll be sending everyone a copy of this recording after the call, and of course, we'll be inviting you to the next one as well. So thanks everyone. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you very much.